And hello, Jets fans. The pads are on in Florham Park as we take another huge step for the beginning of the 2022 regular season in the NFL. Thank you so much for joining us here on Rich Sports Talk. So much to talk about today. I know the trade deadline is heating up. I know that everything is getting exciting around baseball today. But let's still talk about football. You know, I love football. You know that this is the main thing we talk about on this channel. But so far, so good at the Jets practices. I do have a couple thoughts, a couple of observations, and I also wanted to talk a little bit about some intriguing players on this team. I actually have a pull up in the community page on the channel if you'd like to go fill that out. But I wanted to talk about some of the underrated players that really probably won't be a main discussion in main media, but could be intriguing players to watch. And if they really perform well in training camp, will make this season a lot easier for the New York Jets. Of course, as always, the comment section always open if you have any thoughts on practices so far. But observations from the first practice, I know a lot of people are criticizing Zach Wilson. Of course, the beautiful throw he made has kind of gone viral on social media, but I did see a lot of people saying, well, you know, Zach Wilson was 4 of 8 in training camp yesterday. And look, I think it's way too early to start panicking about Zach. Again, one of the things that's different about offense and why it tends to lag behind the defense is an instinctive position where, yes, Zach Wilson knows his play, but yes, this is the same system for Zach Wilson, but there's a lot of new pieces coming into this equation, and especially the offensive line. From what I've seen so far in camp, that has been the biggest struggle, especially the tackle position. George Fant's still working back from injury. And we'll talk about the tackle positions a little bit later, but you see that this defensive line has looked really good. And I really believe that this Jets strength of this team is not only going to be the defensive line, but the defense. So I think it's still a little bit too early to worry about Zach Wilson. I do think it is encouraging that you're seeing Joe Flacco looks like he is 100% this season, looking like he's in great backup shape. And that does lead to an interesting debate. And would love to talk about it in depth too, is what happens at the end of camp with the Jets quarterback position, because especially the backup room, we know who the starter's going to be, but I am curious to see what this team does with the backup position. I believe that they're going to go into the season with Joe Flacco. Coaching staff has been raving about it. Joe Douglas, obviously, this is someone that he's always wanted in this building. He was really upset when they weren't able to re-sign him before he went to the Eagles, and the Jets trade back for him last year before the deadline. I'm curious to see what happens with Mike White, especially if it's a great camp. Do the Jets, are they able to keep him on the practice squad? Because I just have a feeling that there's going to be one team out there that's going to take an opportunity on him. And the thing with Mike White, which I really think will be a challenge, is yes, Joe Flacco offers unbelievable knowledge. He offers someone that has really been a great veteran presence in the NFL, that has seen everything in the NFL. But if you're the Jets, the question then becomes with Mike White, if they are close enough, is it better to get a younger quarterback in there as a backup for Zach Wilson and to have a longer backup plan than Joe Flacco, who's probably just a 1-year fix it for 2022? But overall, I think the camp has been really good for the Jets. A lot of the younger players have looked really good. Two guys that have really stood out to me are Martin and Bryce Huff, the edge rushers. And look, they're going to probably be the situational pass rushers this year. It's great to see Carl Lawson looks like he's in great shape coming back, but we'll have to see how he performs when, of course, he's on the field during a regular game. But I've been really encouraged by this defensive line, especially the pass rush. And one play that really stood out in the first practice was the newest Jet, Quan Alexander, making a couple plays around the goal line, really showing off his speed. And that was one of the concerns I had, was how healthy he was. But apparently he looks really good. He looks ready to go. And he just adds yet another good piece to this defense. And really, it's kind of funny because he's more of a luxury right now for the Jets. And the Jets really aren't used to having luxury positions. Like, you look right now, like he came in his defense. Was he a huge need for this team? No. But does he help this team by giving them another weapon, giving them another piece? Absolutely. And I love the ability that he's able to be plugged in. Of course, he was saying yesterday in his press conference, Giants and Saints showed a lot of interest, and he picked the Jets because of Salah and the scheme. And you're starting to see a bit of a change with this Jet team where people do respect Robert Salah. People want to come and play for Robert Salah, which is something you really are encouraged by and really want to see. So overall, I'm really happy with what I'm seeing in practices. The biggest concern I would have, and it's been something I've been basically pounding the desk for the last couple months. And I know, I apologize, guys, if you're subscribers, you're gonna sound I'm gonna sound like a broken record. But if you're new to the channel, make sure you bash that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the latest Jets talk, and of course our coverage of the training camp this year. But my biggest concern was coming into this camp was the backup tackle position. And it also brings a segue to what I was talking about earlier, which is, to me, who are some of the most underrated players who are intriguing in this camp? And I put this poll out for you guys. 50% Michael Clements, 13% Max Mitchell, 13% Jonathan Marshall, and 25% Denzel Mims. And to me, wonder I want to watch the most, and I understand that yesterday left practice a little bit nicked up. I'm curious to see when he's back on the field. This Max Mitchell. Now, I know in the grand scheme of everything, and in a perfect world, the Jets hope Max Mitchell never sees the field this year. Max Mitchell, they use this as a redshirt season for him to learn the position. And this is someone that they're hoping will be at the start of next camp ready to be a plug and play starter, or someone that is competing for a starting tackle position. Here's the thing. If Max Mitchell can show up in this camp and look like he's ready, and not even ready, but just look like he is not swimming, look like he is not underwater, look like someone that isn't completely overwhelmed, I believe that's a good thing. Because right now, Chuma Adoga and Connor McDermott have not been good. And part of the reason for the offensive struggles is this pass rush has been getting home. Now, I do think part of it is that this pass rush, it's more instinctive. It's easier in practice for a pass rush to go, especially because they can anticipate a lot better than in a regular game. Also, the offensive line for the Jets, there's only one player right now on this offensive line that's playing the exact same position for this team again this year, and that's their center, Connor McGovern. I mean, Elijah Vera Tucker's moving to the right guard position. Becton's moving to the right tackle position. You have Laken Tomlinson, who's staying at left guard, but this is his first time with these guys on this team. And George Fant isn't back on that field. So one of the 5 positions on the offensive line that's basically played on this team and also played in the same position, I do think that's going to take some adjustment. But you look, they are getting beat badly in camp. And I do think that the Jets are not done. I'm curious to see what this Jet team does with the offensive line, because I do think that they're going to bring in another veteran. They're going to bring in another swing tackle, but I'm curious to see how soon they are brought in and how soon the Jets are willing to act to bring in a backup tackle, because it has not been great so far. And I'm really just curious to see how they address that position, because is it the biggest need on this team in terms of what you need on the front line? No, but I do think it is the key position that the Jets are not. And one thing I want to watch with Max Mitchell is if he looks ready to go, or at least looks like you can plug and play him for a game or two, that's going to be huge for this team. But of course, nicked up a little bit yesterday. We will have to see when he is, of course, back on the field for this team. Michael Clements, I think, is intriguing for a lot of Jet fans, especially from the poll. I think a lot of people want to see him because this is a player in college that not a lot of people saw. They've seen the incredible Zeke showing up shirtless the first day of camp. And one of the interesting things what the Jets have been doing with him is kicking him inside to the defensive tackle position. I do wonder if they kind of view him as another John Franklin Myers, which is a player that is best suited in pass rushing situations by kicking inside to a guard position and using that pass rush ability to get up the field. Because again, this is a guy that's almost 280 pounds. He's a big defensive end, but you do wonder, in order to get everyone pass rush reps, do they give him inside reps? And he's someone I'm really curious to see how they continue to implement. Eric Fox, MC2, to me is the most intriguing. Not a lot spoken about, and was the most consistent D-back last year as a rookie. Look, I really love Michael Carter II as well, Eric. Uh, and that's one of the good things about him. Like you say, it's one of those things where not a lot was spoken about him, but in some regards, if you're a defensive back and you're not really being talked about, in some ways it can be a good thing because a lot of the times when we talk about defensive backs, it's for one of two reasons. Either they are playing out of their mind and playing great, or more often than not, we're talking about how they are being a detriment to the defense, how they're not being able to cover, how they're getting burned on a daily occasion. So for me, when you're not really talking a lot about Michael Carter the second, I mean, he's going to be this team's starting slot corner this year. To me, that's a good thing. He had an unbelievable season last year, but it's going to get lost, especially in that corner room, when you look at what they've done this offseason, bringing in DJ Reed, bringing in, of course, Sauce Gardner with the fourth pick. Then you have Bryce Hall had a great season. I mean, technically on the depth chart, he's probably fourth, but I do really like Michael Carr the second. I think, Eric, that is an unbelievable player, and I'm really curious to see how he performs this year and how he has gotten better as well. Jay Cochran is going to be Zach's favorite tight end, will be a weapon Zach never had. And really, the tight end room is going to help because Zach didn't have that underneath uh, check down option last year. And I do think both of those guys are going to be huge for this offense. And one of the things, too, like one of the criticisms I kept seeing with the Jets was, well, they don't have size at the wide receiver position. I mean, Elijah Moore is a little bit undersized. Garrett Wilson, the kid they just drafted, is a bit undersized. Like people kept saying, well, they're undersized, they're undersized. Well, Corey Davis is a big target on the outside. Denzel Mims a bigger target. But really, the Jets' size comes from this tight end position. And when you watch San Francisco, so many options come out of the tight end position. Not only for check down options as safety blankets, but the San Francisco 49ers utilize their tight ends to get up the field, like up the seam, to really stretch the defense in the middle of the field. Because you see a lot of the times with coverages, they're trying to predicate to the outside. The safeties are covering to the outside to get the wide receivers, but that tends to leave the field open. That tends to leave the middle of the field as a spot where Zach Wilson can utilize play action. He can push the ball down the middle of the field if he gets comfortable with two big guys that can not only stretch the field, but also guys that can go up and catch those 50-50 balls. Robbie Sabo reckons Garrett Wilson is ahead of schedule, most promising. Look, for me, the biggest thing for the camp, and I've said this before, Captain Techno, the biggest thing for me in this whole camp is, after Zach Wilson's development, is having these rookies stay healthy and get the reps, because that is so important in the new NFL, where you now have reduced practices, you have reduced hitting practices, and you even have reduced preseason games, only 3 preseason games now, that it is crucial for these rookies to get every single rep as possible, because we're talking about an NFL where these guys would get hundreds and hundreds of reps before they even played a regular season game. That's not the case anymore with the new CBA, with the new rules. So these guys have to make the most of it. And one of the reasons I think we saw it take Elijah Moore a bit of time was because he got nicked up in training camp last year. So you just want these guys to stay healthy. If they have to miss a practice or two just to get a quick recovery, that's fine. But if they missed like a week of practice, that could be detrimental. So the good news for the Jets right now is Sauce Gardner's getting his reps. You have Jermaine Johnson getting his reps. You have Wilson getting his reps. You have Breece Hall getting his reps. Like that to me is really huge. Like for training camp, like it's funny because you want these guys to get as many reps as possible, but you also want to come out of the camp feeling positive and feeling like your team is healthy. Like we've already seen it happen around the NFL. I mean, we saw it with the Buccaneers losing Ryan Jensen for pretty much the entire season. Now they're struggling to figure out the center position. We saw it with the Cowboys the other day, losing one of their receivers for the first couple of weeks of the season. And we are not even at the first preseason game. And we saw it last year with the Jets. I mean, the biggest offseason acquisition, I think the one players we're most excited about, and I was seeing what Lawson could do on this defense. And really, when he was having the unbelievable camp last year, you were excited, thinking like, this is probably the best Jets pass rusher since John Abraham. And all of a sudden he gets injured, and it just felt like, okay, the season where you needed every single thing to go right to somehow be in the mix is already off to a terrible start. So I think that's the biggest thing, is to stay healthy in the camp. But I'm really excited to see what Garrett Wilson can do. I really like that he looks ahead of schedule. And it's going to be fascinating, too, to see how this offense utilizes both him and Elijah Moore. I think you're going to see still a lot of jet sweeps, a lot of creative plays from this offense. And look, it's still early. I think that you're going to see a lot of development. Again, it comes from the chemistry. You guys see Zach develop that chemistry with those younger receivers. So again, guys, chat is open. If you have any questions, would love to hear from you guys, what your thoughts are so far in training camp. Of course, practice again beginning today. The second practice in pads. Of course, we'll have more reactions later this week to talk about what we're seeing in practice so far. But it is interesting too with training camp, because one of the things I've been talking about ad nauseum this offseason, and I know he's looked really great, but I do think I do have to bring this up, which is Denzel Mims. You've heard it from LaFleur. You've heard from this coaching staff. He's looked great in this camp. He looks in unbelievable shape. I just get the feeling that we're going to get to the end of this camp and Denzel Mims is going to be used as a trade piece. And one of the big reasons, too, is because wide receivers, yes, there's a ton of wide receivers in the NFL, but we've also seen a lot of injuries happen. We saw it yesterday with the Cowboys having an injury to one of their receivers already going down in camp. I'm trying to remember what kind of a fracture it was. I'm trying to think, also look it up too. Who it was? Yeah, James Washington carted off the field, likely out 6 to 8 weeks. And I'm trying to remember too, I think Michael Gallup's coming off an injury as well. So you're already looking to, like, James Washington already down for the Cowboys in their camp. It's only a matter of time before another receiver can go down another camp. And if the Jets are healthy coming out of camp, then I do think you'll see Denzel Mims become a lot more valuable, because you have to really think about this if you're the Jets, because it's about supply and demand as well when you're in the trade dead market. And right before the season, right after training camp, when a couple of guys could potentially go down, Denzel Mims' value might not be higher than ever if you're looking to trade him. So I am really curious to see how the Jets approach Denzel Mims' situation. Now, if one of these Jets gets nicked up, like if Corey Davis has a nagging injury and he's going to miss 2 to 3 weeks, if one of these rookies has like an injury that he's going to miss 2 to 3 weeks, or if Jeff Smith gets injured for 3 or 4 weeks, and then you can put them at least on the short-term IR, then of course I think Denzel Mims is a part of this roster for opening day. But if the Jets come out of this camp healthy, if the Jets come out and they feel like really confident in the development of Wilson, they feel Elijah Moore's ready to rock and roll, they really like what Braxton Berrios is doing, and they feel Jeff Smith, because of what he can do on special teams, is a better fit, then it might not hurt this team to look at going another option. Because you've already heard some rumblings too about some players that could be potentially on the market. I think one of them is Tevin Jenkins. I mean, that, of course, reported by Ian Rappaport yesterday. You know, former second-round pick from the Chicago Bears. That could be an interesting player to keep an eye on. Now, he wouldn't be a starter for the Jets, but we're talking about someone that was a second-round pick last year, was supposed to be a left tackle, had back surgery to miss the first few months of his career, really didn't get going, really has had a tough start to his career. But the Jets could get him for nothing. I mean, we're talking about someone that has a lot of talent, and if the medicals clear out, it gives the Jets all of a sudden an intriguing backup option. And Joe Douglas loves offensive linemen. He's never going to have enough offensive linemen, in his opinion. So that is a player I can keep an eye on. And in some ways, that maybe could it be a trade, because you have 2 second-round picks that maybe don't fit what those teams want right now. The Bears give up a second-round offensive lineman who the Jets can plug as a rotational backup, as a left or right tackle, and gives them significant upgrade at the depth. And also for the Bears are thin at the wide receiver position. They lost their best receiver in free agency. Darnell Mooney's probably their number one option. And look, they just need weapons for Justin Fields. So that to me would be a great trade. Like if the Jets could somehow pull that off, is if Denzel Mims maybe a swap. And I've been saying this for Denzel Mims too. I feel like he's either going to go for a draft pick or it's going to be kind of a swap between a team where you have two players where each franchise drafted either in the second or third round isn't really living up to expectations and probably just needs a change of scenery in order to refresh their career, restart their career. So I think that that could be an option for the Jets. It's just an idea of an option. You guys can tell me what you think or if you agree, if you disagree. But I just saw that come across the trade bar, and I'm like, look, even if the Jets trade for an offensive lineman, that doesn't necessarily mean they're trading to get a starting offensive lineman. Of course, Mims moving up in the poll now up to 30%. So, of course, I mentioned Denzel Mims, and I see that number go up in the poll. So, thank you guys for that. But even if the Jets go out and draft an trade for an offensive lineman, I do really think that it's to just help build up the trenches, help build up the backup tackle position. And we've seen it in camp right now. Chuma Doga and Connor McDermott, like at best, you would hope that they're your second backup option on the tackle position, not your first option. And that's one of the reasons I keep saying I'm curious to see where Max Mitchell is. Of course, came off the field yesterday in practice. We'll have to see when he's back on the field and how he looks on the field. He hasn't really gotten a lot of reps so far. You've seen a lot go to Chuma. You've seen a lot go to McDermott. In some ways, that's expected. I mean, I really think the best hope for the Jets is that they want Max Mitchell to be a red shirt this season. But if a young offensive lineman comes up and really if someone that they feel that they could unlock their potential. Because if you're trading Denzel Mims for a player, it's someone that's disappointed somewhere else that's no longer a scheme fit, that just doesn't fit what that team's doing, or it's been a big disappointment. And I could see Chicago maybe doing that. And that seems like a good trade partner for the Jets. But I also look at Dallas right now. Dallas now losing a couple receivers. We know Jerry Jones is desperate. We know that they are looking to go for it this year. And to be frank, their division is bad. The Cowboys should win the NFC East. Now, are they a Super Bowl contender? I think that that's a bit of a stretch. But if you are the Cowboys, are they willing to give up a draft pick for Denzel Mims? Potentially. They've done an unbelievable job building their defense. Do they have someone on the defensive line that the Jets can maybe target? Is there an offensive lineman on that team that all of a sudden the Cowboys think they have so much good depth that they don't really need someone like Josh Ball, for example, their backup right tackle? Could that be someone that the Jets covet? As camp goes on, I think you're going to see more and more teams that are going to need a wide receiver help because they are going to need to fill a hole, especially because like I've said, you've already started to see it. We've already seen now in the Dallas camp, they lose a significant receiver for a certain amount of time. And if you're a team that's going for it, if you feel your window is now, they're not going to wait. They're going to go for it this year. And look, the Cowboys last year, they were in a great position, but their division now, you look, Giants have a new head coach. I don't think Giants are going to be that competitive, but I do think they're going to be a pain all year. Washington's got a brand new quarterback. And you look at Philadelphia. I mean, Philadelphia had an unbelievable offseason. They've added incredible pieces in the draft and free agency. They're going to be a nuisance as well. So if you're the Cowboys and you know that Dak needs help and he needs weapons, are you really going to let him sit out there and, twist in the wind with below average weapons or missing multiple receivers? I just don't see that happening. Again, guys, chat's open. Would love to hear your comments. Again, the poll, thank you so much for filling that out on Rich Sports Talk. Underrated players to watch closely. Michael Clements, 50%. Jonathan Marshall, 10%. Zonovan Knight, 0%. Denzel Mims, 30%. And Max Mitchell, 10%. Jonathan Marshall's an interesting one for me because the Jets, we haven't really seen a lot of the run defense, but I'm really curious to see, can Jonathan Marshall fill that role that Fatukasi had last year, being that first or second down player that can plug the holes, that can be a good run stopping defensive tackle. I'm really curious to see how he looks out there on the field. I'm really curious to see how he's able to put everything together. He's someone I'm really interested to watch because the Jets, to me, that's another position that I do think they need to upgrade. I've talked about the backup tackle position, but now a nose tackle, run stopping defensive tackle. I think that'll be a little bit easier to fill because we see it all the time. Defensive lineman getting cut at the end of training camp. So that could be a position the Jets could address later. But still, it's a position I would like to see them try to upgrade. I mean, they've already upgraded linebacker with Quan Alexander. And that's one of the nice things about the Jets this year. They really don't have as many holes. Like, even Robert Saleh said, like, they're going to be cutting NFL players this year. The last 2 or 3 seasons, this team has been so bereft of talent. Like, you would see the Jets cut players, and that was it. They didn't go anywhere. This year, you're going to see the Jets cut players, and they're going to get picked up, whether it's going to be a pass rusher that they can't fit because they have so many pass rushers. Maybe it's a cornerback that is picked up by another roster. Like, the Jets now have legitimate NFL players and legitimate NFL depth, which to me is a good sign and is a sign that Joe Douglas has done an unbelievable job of rebuilding this roster that has been bereft of not only talent, but just NFL players for the last, God, how many years? Like, just the breadth of talent that they've been missing has been important. So again, guys, answered some questions in the chat earlier. If you're joining us after the live stream, make sure you put your comments in there so I can answer them. Would love to get back to you as soon as I can. Love hearing from you guys. If you have any questions, ideas of what you'd like me to cover, certain topics you'd like me to talk about, certain players that you'd like me to give a spotlight to, please let me know. And I will say it did get a little bit easier for the Jets with the Deshaun Watson ruling coming out. It's going to be interesting the first 4 weeks. I mean, I'm hoping this team at the bare minimum goes 1-3, but all of a sudden now, the AFC North, I mean, it doesn't look like Pittsburgh knows who their quarterback's going to be. Joe Burrow, of course, sidelined with the surgery. He'll probably be back on the field, but you do wonder if he'll be a little bit slow to start the season. And, of course, now Deshaun Watson will be missing the first few games. Now, Cleveland's not going to be easy because they have that great running game and great defense. And I do think Jacoby Brissett is a capable backup. But it does feel like the Jets' first half got slightly easier. Not much, but slightly easier with the Deshaun Watson ruling yesterday. And of course, that was the big story around the NFL yesterday, was basically just that. But interesting development at Jets camp from Zach Rosenblatt, who covers the Jets on The Athletic. And this is a good sign for Denzel Mims fans, which is working with the special teams today. And I know that might not seem like a huge deal, but this is someone that in the past just didn't really seem like he was open to working with the special teams. This was someone that really didn't want to play special teams, but if he wants to make this roster, he has to show that he can go out there and he can really impact this team. And one of the ways he can impact this team and make this decision easier is if he goes out there and plays special teams. Now, I'm not just saying kick returner, but if he can be a gunner, if he can just be someone on the special teams, because really with the 5th and 6th receiver spots, you're looking for players that really are probably going to get more snaps on special teams in the game than they are as a wide receiver. So an encouraging sign that Denzel Mims is working on the special teams unit. Again, I know it on the surface, not the biggest deal, not the biggest headline. Is it going to make the most waves? But if you're a Denzel Mims fan, you want Denzel Mims to make this team. And if looking like and looking at the poll, and being the number 2 player, you're interested in watching this training camp. I do think it is very interesting to see that. But overall, really excited to see what the Jets are doing. And it's seeing that you now have a player that's going out there and really doing everything he can to make the roster. Because the biggest thing that was questioned last year was his effort. And seeing that narrative is being shifted, that he is biting that narrative, that he is coming into camp really in great shape and doing a great job. is really exciting for the Jets. And look, like I think Denzel Mims, I said this, he was either in the last episode or 2 episodes before. Denzel Mims really has gotten the short end of the stick in a lot of regards because you look when he came in this first season, nicked up, COVID off season, had limited practices, and was really thrown in early in a bad situation with a bad offense, with a bad offensive coach. Year two, new coaching staff, has the food poisoning, comes in camp because of the food poisoning, underweight, not in shape, doesn't really get it going. This year was really Denzel Mims' first full off season with the team, and we'll see if that will pay dividends. Audition. If Quan Alexander does well halfway through the season, can JD give him a raise? I mean, the Jets are getting him on a bargain. It would be interesting if he can stay healthy. I wouldn't be surprised the Jets try to give him like a short-term extension. But that's another great thing about this move for the Quan Alexander one, which I was saying too, was when they first signed him, my thought was, okay, probably 4 to 6 million for a single contract, maybe fully guaranteed 1 year deal. Maybe it's a 2 year deal that's fully loaded on the front half, but maybe opened up on the back half where if he wants to get out or wants another option, he's free. So when they got him for 1.2 million, I think a quarter million guaranteed, I'm like, this is a bargain. And I understand too, like he's had the injury issues with his previous two teams, but this is someone that I really believe that the Jets, and I kept saying this when in the signing episode, and you haven't checked that, you can go watch it, but that Quan Alexander isn't going to be an every down back for this team, but ideally on this defense, especially in the front seven, Salah wants these guys playing 65 to 70% of the snaps. So you'll see Quan Alexander more out there in pass rushing situations, in passing downs, and third and long, and second and long, where if it's a running situation, I really believe you're going to see CJ and Quincy out there a bit more. But just having him on that defense and looking healthy and ready to go and already coming out there making plays in practice, showing off the athleticism, it just gives the Jets another valuable tool that they can use. It gives them a linebacker that can cover in the flats, someone that can cover on defense, can cover potentially tight ends, but also gives them another pass rush option. It gives them another speed guy where you already have Quincy Williams, but you now have another linebacker that's got a great burst that can get up the line, can get up and make a play. And you can maybe sneak him in as a blitzer coming off the edge, maybe sneak him up coming up the middle, delay blitzes up the middle. It gives the Jets a lot of option. And okay, I know I'm going to butcher this, so I apologize. Anka29 or Antgia29. I hope I said one of those two is the right one. If it is, I apologize. Hey, Rich, I'm a Mims fan. In my opinion, I think he can be saved. Mims salvation. So far, he's showing effort. I would hate to give up on that size and speed. And that's going to be the interesting thing, too, is because in some regards, I do agree with you that Mims does bring something to the table. Now, the Jets receiving core over the last 24 months has gone through a revolution where they've really increased the speed. You have Braxton Berrios, that's a shifty runner, but someone that can make a play down the field. You have Elijah Moore and, of course, Garrett Wilson. But Mims is really someone that the Jets don't have a combo of. Yes, they have the big receiver in Corey Davis. Yes, they have the faster receiver that can stretch the field like Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson, but they don't have that combination in one player. The biggest thing for him, man, is going to be the route running because this is a system that is predicated on you being in the right spot, the right time. And really, the scheme is designed to get you open. In Adam Gase's system, the system was designed that you needed receivers that could create that separation or be able to win those contested catches, which Denzel Mims fit because you saw a guy that could vertically stretch the field, get away from defenders, but more importantly, in the 50-50 ball situations, could go up and fight and get that ball. This system, if you look is designed more for guys that are crisp route runners and guys that can create that separation through their route running, not necessarily on their physical gifts. And yes, having guys like Elijah Moore and Wilson with that quick burst that can get in and out of their cuts quickly, that can run those precise routes are crucial. But a guy like Denzel Mims has never been asked to, unfortunately, be a great route runner in his career. And it's sometimes you see this with receivers too, where when you have a guy that's 6'3" and that can run that fast, they don't really need to necessarily work on their craft in terms of their route running preciseness a lot, because in college and in high school, they've just been faster than everyone and bigger than everyone. But now in the NFL, you got guys that are bigger, you got guys that are stronger, you got guys that can stay with you. So I do think that that is something that is different. But for Mims, I do think he can be saved. And like I said, Ant, this to me is going to be a crucial camp. And a lot of it came down to this was really his first full offseason with A, the same quarterback, with B, the same system, and C, being healthy. Because Mims, the first two off seasons, had an injury in his first offseason and the shortened camp because of COVID. And then last year, year two, where he probably would have had an unbelievable opportunity, had the food poisoning, came into camp underweight, and it took him a long time to get back in shape and get back into his physical, what he expects to be on the field in terms of weight. And that really isn't his fault. But by the time he really was hitting the ground running, he just was so behind the eight ball. You saw guys like Elijah Moore step up. You saw guys like Corey Davis develop a great rapport with Zach Wilson. You saw guys really just push him down the depth chart. Spin Max Dave, the Spin Master. Hey, Rich, just signing in now. Who do you think will be the best Jets player that they will cut? Man, that's that's a good one. In terms of cuts, I mean, I've talked about Denzel Mims as a possible trade. I am curious to see what happens in the cornerback room. I do wonder if the Jets maybe look to trade Bryce Hall if they get the right price and if the rest of the corner room looks great. I would say it would probably be someone that's one of the pass rushers. Now, I don't think Martin or Huff are going anywhere, especially with the camps they're having, and the coaching staff loves both those players. If I had to put money on it now, probably Vinnie Curry. He's an interesting player for this Jet team, and it's going to be hard to cut him because they do love that veteran leadership and they do love that veteran presence he brings to that defensive line room. But I just look at that defensive line. There's so many good players, and there's so many good young players, especially with some upside, where even if Curry has a great camp, I mean, we're talking about someone that had to miss the entire season over a major medical issue, who's going to be in his mid 30s. I mean, he's not in the long term, really, future of this team. And do the Jets also look at it as a situation too where, yes, they want to compete for the playoff spot, but maybe Curry could go to a team that you know is going to make the playoff spot for maybe one last run or two? That to me would be my guess. But if I had like that, that's who I would say, because I just have a feeling like if the Jets right now, if it's going to come down to cuts, they're going to be very wary about cutting someone that has upside, that has length in their career, and someone that has a longer runway than Curry. Like that's just to me. But Curry also veteran present, can stop the run, is someone that I do think it's going to be hard for this team to cut because this is not good. More bad news out of Tampa Bay, according to Rick Stroud. Tristan Wirfs carted off the field. So now Tom Brady could be out without his Pro Bowl center. He's already lost his Pro Bowl guard who retired, and now they're losing their right tackle. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers could be without their three best offensive linemen going to next year. Jesus, that is crazy. Wow, I did not see that coming. So I know that's a bit of a pivot there, but man, Tom Brady's like, can I go back into retirement for a year? Because I really don't want to get hit that much. But it's one of those things too. You wish the Jets had maybe a slightly more offensive line depth, maybe could trade someone to the Bucks. But man, that is crazy. Oops, LOL. Okay, I don't think that's a question, but uh, again, guys, chat's open. If you have any questions, comments about camp so far, would love to hear what your thoughts. But Jets training camp, of course, underway right now. Like I said, big thing today that I've seen is Denzel Mims working out with the special teams staff. Garrett Wilson also returning punts as well. But I'm really excited to see if Denzel Mims can play special teams, because if he can do that and do that well, if it's me, I'm keeping him over Vincent Smith. And I know Smith can do a lot out there. I understand that he can do a lot of great things. He brings a lot of versatility to the table. But Denzel Mims still, to me, has so much upside. And I really don't think they want to give up on him. I just really don't want to see that happen, because I understand that this 2020 draft was for a different coach and was Joe Douglas's first draft, but I don't think this organization wants to give up on a couple of these guys. I mean, we talked about Becton ad nauseum, Denzel Mims, Ashton Davis. Like, I don't Smith. They want, yeah, Jet Smith. Sorry about that. I don't know what. Thanks, Nick. I don't know what it was. You know, just lost the train of thought there. So thanks for picking me back up. In your opinion, what's the weakest position on this team? Weakest position, in terms of depth or in terms of top talent? I think the potential weakest position could be the quarterback position. This team, it's going to be on Zach Wilson's development. And you look like right now the Jets have done a great job of addressing depth. They've done a great job of improving this roster. I would say that could be the weakest position if Zach Wilson doesn't develop. But outside of the quarterback, I would say tackle, just because I'm not sure what you're going to get. I mean, I really like George Fant, but is he going to stay healthy for 17 games? I love Becton's upside, but is he going to stay healthy for 17 games? Is he going to adjust to the right tackle position? Is he going to be able to hang with pass rushers? Is he going to be able to play at 100% most of the season? I don't know. And outside of that, we've seen the backup positions at the tackle position. To me, it's the tackle position. And it's because there's so many question marks, where if this team lost DJ Reed for 4 to 6 weeks, I'm like, okay, they have Bryce Hall to step in. If they lose a safety for a couple weeks, okay, they have someone to step in. If they lose a linebacker, not ideal, but yeah, they have at least someone that can kind of step in or at least adjust with, like, if CJ missed 4 to 6 weeks, you give Quan Alexander more reps, but you still have some depth at least there. They have so much depth on the defensive line. So even the tight end position, the running back position, if this team loses Becton or Fant for 4 to 6 weeks, that could be a huge detriment. So that's why I think the tackle position outside quarterback. Any word out of camp regarding my NC State alum Bam Knight? Well, I do know he did have a fumble yesterday. I do know Michael Carter was trying to coach him up so far. I think a lot of it's going to be how he looks in the preseason games. A lot of them, too. Don't forget, too, Spin Max, that they also have 2 young running backs. This isn't like you have a 4th or 5th year veteran running back that knows the playbook and is just kind of going through the motions and just getting in shape. I mean, you have Michael Carter, who's still developing. You have Brees Hall, who's their high-profile rookie, but they're trying to get him reps and comfortable in this offense. So you're not going to see as many reps like in some camps where the 3rd through 6th running backs get their touches, because you have your top 2 running backs are still young, and you want to go out there and you want to give them experience in the system, give them their reps. So I do think you're going to have to see him in the preseason games what he can do. But he's one of those guys I do think could be someone that could make this roster. It all depends on if they carry 4 running backs or how they divvy up this roster in terms of the construction. Flacco looks good. Zach and Flacco look fine. How's it weak? Nick, when I said weak, I was just responding to the question, which was what could be the Jets' weakest position. And like, let's be honest, the quarterback position is so integral to any franchise where if Zach Wilson struggles, this offense is going to struggle this year. Like, that was just looking forward to the season. Like, I'm just being honest. Like, I think Zach's going to have a great season, but if Zach struggles this year, it's Zach's got to be the one that's throwing the football to these good receivers, these tight ends. It's going to be a lot on Zach. That's why I preface it by also saying too, like outside the quarterback position, I think it's going to be the tackle position because I am concerned about the depth. Indiana agrees. I would say tackle. We're 1 injury away from doom. Can the OC create plays to overcome the tackle weaknesses? It's not easy. I mean, you want a great example of what happens when your tackles struggle? Go rewatch the Buccaneers Chiefs Super Bowl. I mean, we're talking about a team that had the fastest receiver in the NFL, the best tight end of this generation, arguably the most talented quarterback of this generation, all on the field together, and they couldn't move the football because of that pass rush, because of the tackle. Now, you can scheme it slightly where you can get the ball out quickly, a little bit more screen passes, a little more 5-yard ins and outs, but that also shrinks your playbook and shrinks what you do well because you have guys that can stretch the field and you have a quarterback that can flick the ball 50 yards on a dime down the field. So when you lose those tackle positions, it does impact your offense because all of a sudden those safeties realize we don't have to cover for 5 seconds. We don't have to worry about a pass going over our heads. We can play it closer up to the line. Corners can play more press coverage. They can get more in the face. They don't have to give up that space like off the line of scrimmage where Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson could do some damage like with some quick outs and quick routes. But if they're playing press coverage because they know that they don't have to worry about the deep throw down the field, it shrinks what your offense can do. It shrinks the playbook and what you can do. So you can adjust, but that is also going to be a huge impact. I read the Bears are looking to trade Tevin Wilkins. What do you think about trading minutes for him? Big Daddy, you missed it. I said that about 20 minutes ago. So you and me are sharing a brain on that. And it's really a situation too. Like if they feel Mims can make a positive impact on this offense, I wouldn't do it. But if they feel confident in their receivers and they feel confident in what they have at the receiver position, and they feel Jenkins, after the injuries last year, is healthy, his medicals clear out, and that he can be a bigger impact. Because I would also argue this for people that are saying, well, why would you trade a receiver for an offensive lineman? Like, if the Jets lose a receiver or two, they have the depth to at least survive. And even if they lose 2 receivers, you're going to have more from the tight end position. They can do more 2 tight end sets. They only really need 3 receivers on the field. And with this offense, you saw that the most. So even if you lose your top 2 receivers, you're still going to have one of the top 3 receivers out there, your 4th receiver, and then you can figure it out with the 5th or 6th receiver. If, like I was saying before, if week 5, Fant goes down with an injury and is out 4 to 6 weeks, I would feel a lot more comfortable if Tevin Jenkins was one of my backup offensive linemen, someone that's a talented offensive lineman that really was just in a bad situation, got hurt last year. Like, to me, he's a more valuable piece. Like, if an injury or 2 happens, what's more valuable to this team? Having Denzel Mims or having a tackle that you hope can be someone that could be a plug-and-play start? Because if Jenkins plays with his potential, this could be potentially someone that could be a starting offensive tackle for this team. And you look at the way the draft every year, the draft is giving us receiver after receiver every single year. You can find great receivers in rounds 2 through 6. You can find them. You can find receivers anywhere in the draft. What you can't find is starting caliber offensive tackles. And this could be something that the Jets could do. So and it said a couple teams are in on Jenkins. I wouldn't be surprised if one of those was Joe Douglas. I'll have to go back and look too if this was someone that the Jets brought in for a visit, if this was someone that they privately worked out. Because if they did, Don't forget, this was also when Robert Saleh was in the building. So this could have been someone that they had an eye on before, and look at this as an opportunity to go out and get that piece. And don't forget, too, that yes, Denzel Mims was drafted by Joe Douglas, but it was for a coach that was with a very different scheme. And look, this coaching staff, if it came down to it, could look at this as a situation going like we drafted two receivers that we wanted in the last two drafts over Denzel Mims. So I do think that's something that we can look at too. I think Zach covers from the weak offensive line play last year in many drops. Shouldn't we say it's more on the line to boost Zach and these young running backs? I agree to an extent with that, Nick. I've been one of the biggest Zach Wilson defenders. I think in the media because like people were saying, oh, Wilson's stats were terrible last year. Wilson played. You look at his touchdowns. He didn't throw that many touchdowns last year. But I looked at the last couple of weeks of the season where he didn't throw an interception his last 156 pass attempts, where he had a positive pass down to touchdown in ratio. And the biggest thing to me was who he was playing, but what he was playing with. Like I always remember the Tampa Bay game where people were upset with the botched play call. And I get it. It was a frustrating play call. But I said, like, look, if I was to tell you that Zach Wilson went toe-to-toe with Tom Brady before the game, you would be happy, even if the Jets lost. And I looked at the depth chart. I always remember I had the list. I said, Zach Wilson was out his top three running backs without his starting left tackle, his starting center, his starting guard, or starting other tackle. He was down three starting offensive linemen, three starting running backs, was down to his fourth, sixth, and seventh wide receivers, and down to his, I think, third and fourth tight ends. And he still went toe-to-toe with Tom Brady. So I felt like Zach got a bit of a raw deal last year, and it's going to be curious to see how he plays this year because he'll have a full deck. He'll have a better weapons around him. But once again, it all comes down to the offensive line. It really comes down to that offensive line. Can they protect him, and can they give the running game? Because the big thing, too, for me is this running game. If we saw this Jet running game when they got rid of Greg Van Roten, I mean, they were averaging close to 5 yards a clip. Like this team in San Francisco, they want to run the football. You want to be able to pound the football, be able to run the ball consistently. And it takes a lot of pressure off of Zach Wilson, where if they're running the ball and it's 2nd and 5 and 2nd and 4, that's a huge difference between 2nd and 8. So I do think you're going to see the running game have a big impact. After we play the Ravens, I bet Joe Douglas can get deals for Mims. The Ravens should be the market for one. I would love to keep him, but you can't turn down a good deal. And the question is, well, what's a good deal for you? Personally, I'd rather try to get a player back, but if a team gives you a 4th round pick or a conditional 5th that becomes a 4th if he plays 50% of the snaps, is that good enough for you? Like, I don't think that would be a horrible trade. But I do think that some Jet fans are going to look at the deal and like say, well, we drafted in the 2nd round. We want a 2nd round pick. You're not getting a 2nd round pick from maybe if the Jets throw in a day 3 pick, they could get a 3rd. Like the Jets threw in like a 5th or a 6th round pick, they could get a 3rd for Mims. But I'm curious to see. But I do have a feeling if Mims is traded, it's going to be before the regular season because these teams want to figure out their roster before the regular season, and a lot of them will try to figure out the first 4 weeks because you have that short-term IR where the guys are out for 4 weeks. So they'll, do some roster juggling. They'll be able to do some gymnastics. So they're not going to add someone after week 1 unless absolutely necessary. Like if they're going to trade for Mims, it's going to be before opening day. Robert Savo on the Aspen show said the Jets' strong position on a whole are the cornerbacks. Do you agree? Yes and no. I know that might sound like a cop-out, but I would say the corner position and the defensive line are close. I think in terms of the depth, both of them have the best depth on the entire team. But if they were to play up to their potential, I do think the corner room could be better because we're talking about Sauce Gardner potentially becoming a lockdown corner, not obviously in his rookie year, but down the road. DJ Reed is a solid starting cornerback, probably even a low end one starting cornerback, but at the very least, a very high end number two. You have Bryce Hall, who would be a solid number two on a lot of teams. And then you have a lot of young guys that are coming to position. I still would contend, though, it's this defensive line because you have so many players. And it's going to be tough, too, because like I've said in previous episodes, I don't think the stats are going to do this defensive line justice because I think when we get to the end of the season, you might see one or two players potentially with double-digit sacks, and it might feel like a disappointment. But don't forget, Salah only wants to play these guys 65 to 70% of the snaps. So you're going to see Quentin Williams off the field a lot. You're going to see Lawson off the field a lot. But that also means that you're going to have a lot of fresh bodies and a lot of sacks that go around. I mean, we're talking about this pass rushing and defensive line unit. Like, we're worried about who they're going to cut at the end of camp. I don't really think that with the corner room. So I do think it's close. I think long term, I do really like the corners. Like, they have some corners that can be special, but we also forget about this defensive line. It's kind of funny because everyone seems to forget about Jermaine Johnson and I get it. Brees Hall offense, I get Wilson offense, and kind of Johnson's a little bit buried to start the season on this depth chart because there's so much talent on the defensive line. I mean, think about it. Like, Jermaine Johnson might not be a starter on this defense. He'll get significant reps, but he'll not be a starter. And this was someone that the Jets moved up to get, and a lot of experts thought could be a top 10 pick in the entire NFL draft. So that tells me what they think of this defensive line room with Quinnen Williams, John Franklin Morrows, Lawson coming back. I mean, you even have Clements in the mix, you have Martin in the mix, you have Huff in the mix. So I still have a feeling that if I had to ask me, Spinmax Dave, I'd give the edge to the defensive line and the pass rushers. If things break right for the Jets, what do you think they're ceiling? A 7-10? If everything goes perfectly, it could be. The biggest thing is going to be how they do in the first half of the season because the first 9 games of their schedule is absolutely brutal. If the Jets can somehow be 4-5 after week 9, I do think 10-7 is really on the table. But even 3-6, it would be tough, but I do think it is capable. But it will be interesting to see how this Jet team does because really the first 4 games are going to be very instrumental in how this team finishes because you look right now, home opener against the Ravens. Now, the Ravens are an interesting team because, yes, the Jets have a lot of moving pieces, and the biggest concern I have is they have so many young pieces and now pieces that they've brought in, the chemistry for week 1. But the Ravens have had such a weird offseason. Yes, they had a great draft, but their quarterback hasn't been paid yet. You wonder if that's going to be a distraction over their head. They traded their best wide receiver. I mean, one of the big things about the Ravens that helps is, yes, Lamar Jackson's a great weapon, and I do worry about their defense, but that offense doesn't have as much firepower as I think the Jets do. So I do think the Jets could sneak a win there. Obviously, the Browns don't have Deshaun Watson. That's still a road trip. Browns are still a very good team. Bengals are an interesting team because, yes, they're the defending Super Bowl champs, but the Jets played them very well. I think the Jets also have a great advantage over the Bengals because, yes, I do worry about their weapons, but the Jets also have a defensive line that can get after Joe Burrow, and I still don't think the Bengals have a great offensive line. Then you have the Steelers. If the Jets come out of the first 4 weeks at somehow 2-2, I do think 10-7 is very possible. The bare minimum is they have to come out 1-3 because then you look Dolphins at home could be interesting. Then it gets really tough for the Jets because then their next few games are at Green Bay with the Packers, at Denver, who I think both of those are losses. Then you have Patriots at home, Bills at home, and then at the Patriots. I think that's going to be really tough. And now the advantage to going to the Patriots this time is they're going to have the bye. Now, of course, that didn't turn out so great last year, but after that Patriot game, their schedule really softens up a lot. I mean, they get the Bears, the Vikings, the Bills again, but then the Lions, Jaguars, Seahawks, and Dolphins to end the season. So I think that the Jets, if the Jets are 4-5 when they finish that second game with the Patriots, they're in a great position. But I do think they have to be 3-6 because if they go 3-6, I think 9 and 8 and 10 or 7 are certainly possible at that back half of the schedule. Another key to winning is avoid the key injury. Yeah, I said that before. I think last year you saw it with Lawson at the beginning of the season because it's not just losing a great player on the field, but I do think that kind of demoralizes a clubhouse. It demoralizes a locker room. Like I was saying with the Jensen injury, now Wirfs was carted off today for the Buccaneers. What's it going to be like in that locker room right now where it's like all of a sudden they used to have one of the best offensive line, 3 Pro Bowl offensive linemen in the span of 12 months. 2 of them are injured and 1 of them retired. Not exactly a great start. So Garrett Wilson, of course, making some big catches today. But overall, I think he's done a really good job. Just looking at Sabo, what he's tweeting out today. A lot of good stuff from camp so far. I do think that overall, don't take too much in the offense right now. There's still a lot of time and still a lot of runway for this team. So I do think I do laugh because some people are like freaking out. Oh, well, Wilson didn't have a great game. Like, look, it's still practice. It's still very early, but I am curious to see what the Cowboys are going to do because you look right now. This is the Cowboys' current wide receiver room: CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Tolbert, Noah Brown, T.J. Vasher, Simi Fehiko, and Kevontae Turpin. So already we're seeing teams starting to get thin at wide receiver position. So if you're the Jets, I would be calling the Cowboys. Like if they could maybe swing an offensive lineman back to the Jets for depth position or a draft pick. Because don't forget too, the Cowboys are in it. The Cowboys are going for like maybe you get an insane draft pick from them. I'm not saying a second rounder, but maybe the Cowboys are so desperate that they're like, look, we'll give you a 3rd round pick for Mims. I mean, I wouldn't hate that. So we'll have to see. I know the Bears are another team to monitor as well for the whole Denzel Mims market, but still a long way to go here in camp. A lot of great things to still talk about, but it's going to be, without question, a crazy training camp, and we will have all of it here for you. So we will be back later this week with more breakdowns, more polls. Of course, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. If you're joining us after, make sure to try to join us in the live stream. Those will be up in the community page when they'll be up, but you can always watch afterwards. Put in the comments thoughts that you have about the Jets training camp, players you want to talk about, questions you might have, observations you might have. Would love to get your feedback, especially from the Jet fans that are at the training camp practices live, maybe giving us some insight on what they're seeing that we can't see behind the scenes. But overall, I'm really happy with what the Jets are doing so far. I can't wait for the first training camp game and the first preseason game, but we'll have more later this week, of course, more in-depth analysis of training camp, more reaction. And of course, guys, thank you so much for joining us as always. Really appreciate the love and support. We'll be back next time here on Rich Sports Talk with more on the Jets 2022 training camp.